But the big story that we've been tracking this week is coming tonight is from across the border, where Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's fate is about to be decided. The Pakistan Supreme Court has assembled to give a verdict tonight on Imran Khan's decision to dissolve the Pakistan Assembly and call for early elections. All 5 judges have met the Chief Justice before pronouncing the verdict. Heavy deployment now outside the courtroom in Islamabad after there was a scuffle between lawyers and police. Remember, Imran Khan had dramatically pushed for the dissolution of the Pakistan Assembly. The Deputy Speaker went ahead with that and a call for early elections. The opposition has gone to the court calling it illegal and unconstitutional. The Supreme Court will deliver a verdict after 3 days of deliberations. That verdict is expected any time now in Pakistan. It's a verdict that will decide the immediate fate of Imran Khan and also what happens in Pakistan next. So that's the big story that's breaking at the moment. Heavy deployment after lawyers and policemen had a scuffle in Pakistan. How does all this impact India? And what does this mean for the future of Pakistan and Imran Khan? KC Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs with us. Abdul Samad Yaqub, member of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Imran Khan's party. Rana Ihsan Afzal Khan is a PML Nawaz leader. Wajad Khan is editor, Nikkei Asia in New York. And Beena Sarwar is journalist, filmmaker and activist scholar. Appreciate all of you joining us. I'm going to get quick comments from all of you to what you see likely to be the future of Pakistan as it's playing out. Beena Sarwar, let me come to you first. All of this is focusing public attention on the future of Imran Khan, but indeed of democracy in Pakistan, that the court, many hope, will ensure that democracy is protected at all costs.
I can't hear what he's saying because there's some other noise in the background.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'll try and come to you in a moment.
I can.
Pakistan Supreme Court has declared that the decision was unconstitutional. The decision was unconstitutional to dissolve the assembly. That's the first big breaking news that we are getting at the moment. So a clear setback for now for Imran Khan. The big question, will they ratify the move to go in for an early election? But the decision to dissolve the Pakistan Assembly has been ruled to be an illegal, unconstitutional move. The Deputy Speaker's move to reject a no-trust move was wrong. Remember, a no-confidence motion had been moved by the opposition, which seemed to have the majority when the decision was taken to dissolve the Pakistan Assembly. Now, the Deputy Speaker's decision has been deemed unconstitutional. That's the big breaking news that we are getting at the moment from Pakistan. The Deputy Speaker's no-trust ruling has been rejected. So, Imran Khan first setback there, and let's get immediate reactions first from you, Abdul Samad Yaqub. This is a setback. The Supreme Court has said that the decision taken by the Deputy Speaker was unconstitutional. It should not have been taken place. The vote of no confidence should have been allowed. Your first reaction, Abdul Samad?
Well, indeed, it is a setback. It is a great setback, and there is going to be another multiple political turmoil and we are going to face a multiple political crisis. But yet, I welcome the decision, as we admit the decision, we respect the decision of the verdict of the Supreme Court. Even although it is against us, it is a major setback for us, but we are ready to, we have a multiple options. I mean, we were mentally prepared that if the verdict come against us, what will be our strategy?
So what is your strategy? The fact is that Imran Khan is today accused of trying to prevent the Pakistan Assembly from delivering a no-confidence motion. I mean, what strategy is left? This is a huge embarrassment. Imran Khan is being seen as someone who was unwilling to accept defeat.
Well, when no morality left in the politics, I mean, even in the National Assembly, when the members were bribed, they sold their loyalty, and when they fell at this low level, So then we have to make some politically strategic moves.
Well, the
So this
politically
was in order
strategic move has been deemed unconstitutional at the moment by the Pakistan Supreme Court. Rana Ehsan Afzal Khan of the PMLN, this is a big victory for the opposition. Do you see now the road being paved for the removal of Imran Khan and the appointment possibly of Shehbaz Sharif as the Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Well, the decision that was expected has come, and the decision was between doctrine of necessity versus rule of law and implementation of the Constitution. And in the remarks today, it was amply clear that everyone thought there was consensus that the ruling of the Speaker was unconstitutional. And now, if the ruling stands unconstitutional with this decision, the Assembly has been given the status back. It has resumed again, and the no confidence will resume. So this is the win for the Constitution. This is a win for democracy in Pakistan, and this is an excellent decision because what Imran Khan did, what the Speaker did, and the President on Imran Khan's recommendation was basically killing the Constitution. It was ignoring the Constitution.
We are also being told that the court has said that Imran Khan will have to seek a vote of confidence on the 9th, or the no trust vote will take place on the 9th, and early elections are ruled out. So clearly Imran Khan on the back foot there. Let's get in reactions. Wajat Khan, editor Nika Asia there in New York. Your reactions, is this a moment where Pakistan can celebrate democracy, that here is the court of Pakistan reinstating the assembly when an elected prime minister chose to dissolve it when he seemed to have lost the numbers? Is this a moment where Pakistan can say, look, our courts are functioning?
Rajdeep, thank you, and a very good evening to you. I think this is a moment of serious rethinking. The people of Pakistan weren't really involved in the last few days or weeks of politicking. Frankly, the powers that be in Pakistan, especially the military establishment, needs to be rethinking and re-asking itself the following questions. For decades, for years, it's said that the two-party system is corrupt, primarily the PMLN and the PPP, and that the leaders in those parties don't really represent
we are having a problem
the right
with your audio, Wajat. We are going to try and fix that. Bina Sarwar, if you can hear us, your first reactions to what has happened. Is this a moment for Pakistan to rejoice, particularly because the army seems to have stayed out and allowed the Supreme Court to take a call?
Yes, thank you, Rajdeep. It's good to see you and good to be here. I think that everybody was definitely on tenterhooks about this, and there was a lot of cynicism about what the courts would do because of the history of the courts have in the past, the so-called doctrine of necessity and all that. But the courts have also in the past really come into their own, given solid decisions based on merit, which I think this one was, because like you just said, for an elected prime minister to dissolve his own assembly, it's like what Musharraf did, like a coup against himself, and Imran Khan has proved that he's not a team player, unfortunately. We saw that with his very first World Cup win, if you remember, when he said that I won. Well, it's not about him. It's not about one person. This is about a process, about a democratic political process that he is supposed to be part of. And when he didn't like the results, he overturned the board and he said, I'm not playing. He proved to be a bad sport, which is really unfortunate for someone who was such a hero, somebody who was such an icon in the cricketing world. So yeah, at this point, I think this is something that we can sort of take a breath, we can take a sigh of relief, we can say, okay, something, maybe the process, if Imran Khan allows this process to continue and doesn't throw another googly in the mix or doesn't clear the pitch again, I may be mixing my cricket metaphors, but if this is allowed to continue, then maybe we can keep moving, inching along this path to this democratic political process that only really began after the unfortunate assassination of Benazir Bhutto, which allowed after which the PPP came into power, which was the first political party in the history of Pakistan to hand over power to the next elected government, which then handed over power to the next elected government, which is Imran Khan. So that's 3. I mean, we were hoping this would be a hat trick, right? But he didn't allow it to be, but it still might be.
So in a sense, it reaffirms the hope that many Pakistanis have that at least for now, democratic process being restored. Wajad Khan, we couldn't hear you clearly. We've tried to restore the line. Give us your quick first comment to what you've seen happen in the last few minutes in the Pakistani Supreme Court.
I think it's a moment of serious, deep rethinking, which is required, Rajdeep, by the deep state. For years, they've basically tried to do whatever they can to break the two-party system down. They brought this guy in, gave him all the support he required. However, unfortunately, for the people of Pakistan, for the larger process of governance, even though the runway was laid out for former Prime Minister Khan, he couldn't get his governance right. His politics of vindictiveness united what was a divided opposition. He did, in a way, he had a populist appeal, but his moves were clearly looking like, in the long term, they would be detrimental not just to the process of democracy in the country, but moreover, also the national security of the country. While populism has a certain charm, globally populists have come back, but Mr. Khan's constant chest thumping aside, strategic moves he was making vis-a-vis the US, Russia, China, India, and of course, taking on his own sponsors, the Pakistani military, seems like he was on a suicidal path. And I think this is a good time for the Pakistan's men in uniform to rethink and reassess that how they're leading from behind a surgery of Pakistani politics, which perhaps was required because, yes, the two-party system was inept to a certain extent, but this sort of direct interventionism didn't really play out the way they wanted, which goes on to show you that perhaps democracy and governance should be left to those who know it best, which is the men and women of the Pakistani parliament. And that parliament and that system and that judiciary has spoken today. In a way, I'm happy.
The fact, as you said, is Imran had pressed the self-destruct button. And today, in a way, the Supreme Court has sent out a signal that this is not a cricket pitch where you can set the rules. There are certain rules which will be set by courts according to the constitution. KC Singh, your first reaction. Is this a moment of hope in a strange way for Pakistan, a country where in the past transitions have taken place either through military coups, but this time it's the court which is reinstating the Pakistan Assembly, and the military for now seems to be staying out?
You know, it was quite clear. It's a well-established principle in the Prime Ministerial Westminster form of government that once you have a no confidence, you cannot ask for dissolution if you have lost the majority. Now, the majority is going to be determined by the no confidence motion. So you don't face the motion and you dissolve the House on the pretext that there was a foreign hand which was pushing that. Now, interestingly, the army never came on board. General Bajwa was very clear. He, at a seminar in Islamabad, just threw out of the window the foreign hand notion. So you could see the military had just relationship between Imran Khan and military had soured so much. And to pick up from the previous speaker, I think they just gave up on this third option. Much as you've seen Mr. Imran Khan's friend Sidhu did the same thing in Punjab. He brought about so much disruption. By the end of it, you know, cricketers can just leave a very sour ending at the end.
No,
so
I've actually
there are also
rules
of the Pakistan National Assembly.
You're bringing in Navjot Sidhu. I've done a column on comparing Imran and Sidhu and this disruptionist school of Trump politics. I call it the Donald Trump style of politics, where the individual believes he or she is bigger than any institution. Imran Khan has been reminded today that the Supreme Court of Pakistan is far bigger than him. And clearly, therefore, KC Singh, the point that I'm making, that in a way, it's reinforcing, hopefully, public faith in institutions, even in Pakistan.
Absolutely. And also look at the last card that Imran Khan played, because Pakistan requires an interim prime minister if elections are to be held. And he named a former Chief Justice. So he was trying to influence the Supreme Court and say, I'm giving the prime minister's post to a former Chief Justice. So I don't think the court bought any of that. They just followed simple principles. You remember Uttarakhand? Pranab Mukherjee had signed the president's rule. When the legislature was meeting next day, the courts threw it out. They said, once the legislature is meeting, how can you intervene at that stage? So these are well-established principles. And I'm glad the Pakistan Supreme Court has reinforced it. Therefore, not much. I'm sorry to. The other thing is,
yes, I'll come back to you.
Rajdeep, last point.
Yes,
last point. You see why it is a setback for Imran, because he has been rebel rousing, his foreign hand, this and that. He needs the elections immediately. If a good prime minister comes in, stabilizes the economy, works out a proper relationship with everything, and the election goes to next year, Imran will be willy-nilly forgotten. He doesn't want that. He wanted it now.
Can I just bring in Abdul Samad Yaqub of the PTI, because the fact is, Abdul Samad, you're hearing a lot of criticism of Imran. Imran Khan came to power 3 years ago, lots of hope. He let down many believe, a lot of people, governance, economy, foreign policy, huge question marks. And eventually when he was declared run out, he refused to accept the verdict. Do you concede that Imran Khan needs a reality check? That today the court has given Imran Khan a reality check?
Well, one has right to raise a question on the governance, whether it is a good or a bad. That is a separate issue. But calling it a running away, no. We are actually going to face the public. I mean, we are the only one who are ready for the elections. I mean, we are. What to say? I mean, this is the opposition who is running from the election. I mean, this is the first time that the government, the previous government, I mean, when we was incumbent, we are going to face. We are the only stakeholder who are ready to contest the elections, and they are trying to.
But you've lost a majority. But you've lost a majority. You had lost a majority. There is a democratic setup. When you lose a majority, you have to face the assembly. You can't say, I will choose when to call an election.
So, losing a majority by this way, the way they have done with us, I mean, they have what we call, they bribed the members, the members sold the loyalty. That is a separate issue. But even the best solution is all stakeholders should face the public. I mean, go and win the election, try to contest the election. That is the best solution. Now there is the beginning of another political crisis.
Okay.
I mean, what if tomorrow, what if the no motion is successful and the overmove is we massively resign from the assemblies and we dissolve the KPK assembly or later a Punjab assembly, then there will be another turmoil. I mean, although my friend Rana Ehsan Afzal is very excited and he was expecting that he was he actually thought that the verdict may come under the law of necessity, the way it was previously we have witnessed or observed. But finally, we are matured enough that this time the Supreme Court didn't go for the law of necessity or doctrine of necessity. So at least the good sign is we are politically mature enough that we, although it is a setback for us, but we are welcoming the verdict of the Supreme Court.
But you're not going to get your demand for an early election. Rana Ehsan, there'll be those who will say go in for an election. The PTI is saying Imran Khan is ready to go in for an election. Let the people decide rather than create a coup in parliament by buying over his MNAs. That the opposition is being accused of buying MNAs, of buying members of parliament.
Similarly, it was also being accused of an international conspiracy. But all that has gone down the drain. Number two, Imran Khan, the label and the stamp will stick onto him that he violated the constitution of Pakistan, which previously was done by the dictators, not democratic leaders. And in democracy, we have to remember that what is utmost important is that how assemblies are elected and how they are dissolved. When you go for undemocratic ways and you play outside the game, you play outside the rules of the game, you know, this is what happens. And this is,
let me stop you for a moment, because your leader, Shehbaz Sharif, is speaking at the moment. Many believe he could be the next Prime Minister of Pakistan, the leader of the Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz Group. Listen in.
मजबूत किया है पार्लियामान का जो सॉवरेनिटी है उसको मजबूत किया है और आइन के तकद्दुस को बहाल किया है। मैं समझता हूँ कि ये एक शहर रमज़ान में ये एक बहुत बड़ा ये मार्का सर किया है पाकिस्तान के 22 करोड़ अवाम ने, मुतहद्दा अपोजिशन ने और तमाम इत्तेहादी पार्टीज़ ने और अवाम के साथ मिलकर ये जो जंग हमने गुर्बत के ख़िलाफ़ लड़नी है, बेरोज़गारी के ख़िलाफ़ लड़नी है और महंगाई के ख़िलाफ़ लड़नी है, ये इंशाअल्लाह हम मिलकर इंशाअल्लाह लड़ेंगे। आज हमें अल्लाह ताला के यहाँ अपना सर को अपना उसके सजदा रेज होना है और उसका अपना जितना शुक्र अदा करें वो कम होगा।
शहबाज साहब, आपने एक फैसला किया था।
Wajat Khan, it's one thing for Imran Khan today to be, in a sense, embarrassed by what the Supreme Court has done. But is Shahbaz Sharif, someone whose brother Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister, is outside the country, has serious corruption charges against him? Bina Sarwar, why don't you take that? The fact is that those who are in the opposition and likely to form the government, they've got huge credibility crises against them as well. Both the PPP and the PMNL are accused of massive corruption. So, what does their return really mean for Pakistan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rajdeep. I think the being accused of corruption, the thing is that everybody is very partisan right now. Those who support Imran Khan, PTI will find any way to justify what he is doing. Those who support People's Party or the PMLN will sort of say that, well, those corruption charges were never proved. There is no, there's endless arguments to be made. I think this is time for everyone to take a step back from partisan politics and look at take a larger picture and see what's happening and try and focus on for the good of the country, and not to try and uphold individual political leaders.
So what's good for Pakistan? The point is, Bina Sarwar, what's good for Pakistan? You've got corrupted elites whom Imran Khan claimed he was going to provide a new option to. He too is seen now as the god that failed. So what is it? What is the new way that Pakistan goes ahead?
So, Rajdeep, as you said, like Imran Khan had said that he's going to, change all the system, but he ended up having a lot of people around him that were from the same old system that he was criticizing so bitterly when he was outside it. So right now what we need to do is let the process continue. The process is that a no confidence motion was being moved in the assembly, and an elected prime minister dissolved his own assembly, which is absolutely unthinkable, but he did that. Because he wanted to hold on to power. This should not be about personal political power. This has to be about letting that process continue, at the end of which things will shake down. In India, for example, we see what's happening in India, where a democratic political process has been continuing for a long time, except for those 3 years during Indira Gandhi's emergency. And we were looking to India to see what happens when you have a democratic political process. Things shake out. You saw it in America with Trump. He was not elected again. In India, that did not happen. You had a government come in again, and you have a lot of undemocratic things happening despite there being an elected government. So obviously elections and democratic political process are not the be-all and end-all of everything, but it does give room for things to shake out and even out and get things back to a par, and eventually and as we move ahead, just to finish my thought, as we move ahead, just each time 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still a step forward. So that's what I think we are doing right now.
Interesting in a way. But Wajat Khan, is this the end of the road for Imran Khan? I mean, as you said, he's a populist leader. There are groups who still believe that he's a better option than the dynasts of the past. Do you see Imran Khan making a comeback, or do you believe without the army support now and the Supreme Court's indictment today, Imran Khan now is facing diminishing returns?
I think you've hit it on the head with that question, Rajdeep. But quick introspection required here. That considering the military support, you said, why does he have a future with the military's support, which is now no longer present? Well, this was, in a way, a car crash in slow motion, right? I mean, populism has a certain appeal and has a certain charm. It's worked for leaders all around the world. It may work for Khan in his comeback campaign. He's already trying to place himself as this anti-American, independent foreign policy folk hero. However, in terms of practicality, and this is where the people of Pakistan as well as the institutions of Pakistan will have to assess his record. And his record is quite, well, sad. Politics 101 dictates that when you have a fragile coalition, don't play vindictive politics. Be nice to your coalition allies. Be nice to people within your party. Even be nice to the opposition. He didn't do that. Economics 101 dictates that when you're broke and constantly under debt, then you have to trade with people around you. For example, the Republic of India. Whether you like the Indians or not, you have to trade with them. He cancelled that. He cancelled India out of any conversation in Pakistan. The army was for talks with India while Khan wasn't. That's how much of a hardliner he was.
Right.
International Relations 101 dictates that in this bipolar world with Cold War 2.0 kicking off between China and the US, well, be very careful. Don't take sides. You'll get caught up. But guess what? He got caught up. He took sides. So this was a car crash in slow motion. It wasn't just the last few weeks. It was a couple of years of failed policy. However, will the people of Pakistan who vote for him see through the practicality of other options versus his the appeal of his populism? I can't say. But what I can say is that the last time around, it was quite clear covering the 2018 elections from Pakistan, from the ground. And the reason I left Pakistan, by the way, after those elections, was I was quite saddened by the sophisticated nature of rigging and support which Mr. Khan and his party got from the powers that be. It was something which personally saddened me, and I left the country, left the system, and especially the way they went for institutions like the media, which had, frankly, which was where the Khan machine was born. Imran Khan wouldn't be where he was today if he hadn't given those hundreds and maybe perhaps even thousands of interviews to Pakistani media, a vibrant Pakistani media, which remains in tatters today. So in a way, his populism hasn't just backfired in terms of policy, it's also backfired in terms of his own support. Today, the same anchors, the same writers, the same columnists who were for him not long ago are not for him anymore because, well, he's self-destructive.
You know,
that makes me sad.
That's very well put. A car crash in slow motion and the limits of personality-based populist politics. And this is true not just for Imran Khan, it's true for several leaders across the world. There are limits to personality-centric politics that doesn't focus on processes, that believes in the individual rather than institutions. Imran Khan has finally had to accept today the Supreme Court that there is, you may be the captain of Pakistan, you can have won World Cups, you can have all the hope that you bring in as a political leader, but you cannot subvert the constitution. Pakistan Supreme Court today has stood up and stood up tall, and that's good for India because in India, we've often worried about an unstable Pakistan with institutions being destroyed. Today, the Pakistani court has in a way checked their politicians. So good news in a way coming in that sense from across the border. Thank you all very much for joining us.